Ma'am, the overhead bins are full. That bag needs to be checked.
But there's space right there. I literally
You need to stop arguing and move. You're blocking boarding.
I paid extra for carry-on. I'm not trying to cause
I don't care
trouble.
what you paid for. Check it or get off this aircraft.
Yo, are you serious?
The boarding process for Flight 447 to Chicago had been chaotic from the start. Sarah Mitchell squeezed down the narrow aisle of the Boeing 737, her carry-on bag bumping against seats as she searched for 12A. The overhead bins were already stuffed full. Passengers jostled for space. The air was thick with frustration. Sarah was exhausted. A brutal week of depositions and contract negotiations had left her drained. All she wanted was to sink into her seat, close her eyes, and forget about work for 3 hours. She found her row and lifted her bag toward the overhead compartment. It didn't fit. She tried again, angling it differently, still too full. "Excuse me," Sarah called to a passing flight attendant. "Could you help me find space for this?" The flight attendant, her name tag read Jennifer Martinez, barely glanced at her. "You'll have to gate check it," she said curtly, already moving past. "Wait," Sarah said. "I paid for priority boarding specifically so I wouldn't have to check my bag. There should be space." Jennifer stopped and turned back, her expression hardening. "Ma'am, the bins are full. You need to gate check it. But I can see space in the bin 3 rows back." "Ma'am, you need to move. You're blocking the aisle." Sarah felt her frustration rising but kept her voice level. "I understand, but I paid extra for—" "I don't care what you paid for," Jennifer snapped. "You're holding up boarding. Either check the bag or get off the plane." Other passengers were staring now. Some annoyed, some sympathetic, a few already pulling out their phones. Sarah took a breath, trying to de-escalate. "I'm not trying to cause problems. I just need help finding space for my bag." What happened next would change everything. Jennifer Martinez grabbed Sarah's arm hard and yanked her toward the front of the plane. "You're coming with me," she said through gritted teeth. Sarah stumbled, pain shooting through her shoulder. "Let go of me," she said, her voice sharp with shock. But Jennifer didn't let go. Instead, she tightened her grip and pulled harder. And in that moment, 17 passengers raised their phones and started recording. Because what looked like a difficult passenger being removed from a flight was actually a corporate attorney being physically assaulted by airline staff. And by the time the plane landed, that attorney would have enough evidence to destroy careers, force systemic change, and win the largest assault settlement in the airline's history, $2 million. And it was all caught on camera. Flight 447 was already running 15 minutes late. Jennifer Martinez had been a flight attendant for 8 years, and she prided herself on running an efficient cabin. Delays made her furious. Difficult passengers made her even more furious. And the woman in 12A was being difficult. Jennifer had already told her to gate check the bag. It was a simple instruction: just take the bag to the front, get a claim ticket, pick it up at baggage claim. Easy. But this woman, this entitled, business-class-looking woman in her expensive suit, was arguing. Jennifer hated when passengers argued. "Ma'am, for the last time, you need to move," Jennifer said, her voice getting louder. Sarah Mitchell stood her ground, still holding her carry-on. "I paid for priority boarding. That means I'm supposed to have overhead bin space. If the bins are full, you need to help me find space, not force me to check a bag I specifically paid not to check." Jennifer's jaw clenched. She could feel the other passengers watching, judging, probably thinking she wasn't doing her job properly. "The bins are full because people like you bring bags that are too big," Jennifer shot back. "My bag is regulation size," Sarah said, her voice calm but firm. "I measured it before I left. It fits the requirements." "Well, it doesn't fit in the bin," Jennifer said, "so you need to check it." "Then help me find another bin," Sarah repeated. "That's literally your job." That word, job, hit Jennifer like a slap. How dare this passenger tell her what her job was? She worked 60-hour weeks. She dealt with entitled travelers every single day. She cleaned up after people who treated the cabin like their personal garbage can. She smiled through turbulence and delays and complaints. And now this woman in her expensive suit was lecturing her about her job? "My job," Jennifer said, her voice dropping to something dangerous, "is to ensure the safety of this aircraft. And you are creating a safety hazard by blocking the aisle." "I'm not blocking anything," Sarah said, glancing behind her. People are getting around me just fine. You're blocking boarding, Jennifer insisted, because you won't help me with my bag. Jennifer felt something snap inside her. The frustration, the exhaustion, the years of dealing with passengers who treated her like a servant. Without thinking, she reached out and grabbed Sarah's arm. "You're coming with me," she said, pulling Sarah toward the front of the plane. Sarah's eyes went wide with shock. "What are you doing? Let go of me." But Jennifer didn't let go. She tightened her grip on Sarah's upper arm and pulled harder, practically dragging her up the aisle. "You're being removed from this flight for creating a disturbance," Jennifer announced loudly, making sure everyone could hear. Sarah tried to pull her arm free, but Jennifer's grip was iron tight. Pain shot through her shoulder. Jennifer's fingers were digging into the exact spot where Sarah had an old injury from a car accident years ago. "Stop," Sarah said, her voice cracking. "You're hurting me." Around them, passengers stared in disbelief. A man in 14C started recording on his phone. A woman in 10B did the same. Within seconds, over a dozen phones were pointed at the scene, capturing everything. "Ma'am, you need to let her go," a male passenger called out. "She didn't do anything wrong." Jennifer ignored him, focused only on getting this difficult passenger off her plane. She hauled Sarah up the aisle, past the first-class section, toward the open aircraft door. Sarah stumbled, her bag falling from her other hand and hitting the floor. "I said let go," Sarah shouted, trying to wrench her arm free. Jennifer responded by grabbing Sarah's other arm with her free hand, now gripping her with both hands. "You are being removed for disruptive behavior and failure to comply with crew instructions," Jennifer said mechanically, as if reading from a script. "I'm not being disruptive," Sarah said, her voice rising. "You attacked me. You grabbed me. Everyone saw it." That's when another flight attendant, Marcus, a younger guy who'd been in the galley, rushed over. "Jennifer, what's happening?" he asked, his eyes wide. "This passenger refused to comply with instructions," Jennifer said, still gripping Sarah's arms. "She's being removed." Marcus looked at Sarah, saw the pain in her face, saw the way Jennifer was holding her. "Jennifer, let her go," he said quietly. You can't just grab passengers like that." "She was being difficult," Jennifer insisted. "I don't care," Marcus said, his voice urgent. "Let her go." For a moment Jennifer hesitated, then she saw all the phones pointed at her, saw the passengers' faces, saw the judgment. She released Sarah so suddenly that Sarah stumbled backward, catching herself on a nearby seat. The cabin erupted. "That's assault! Someone call the police!" "I got everything on video." Jennifer stood there, breathing hard, realizing too late what she'd done. And Sarah Mitchell, rubbing her bruised arms, her shoulder throbbing, looked at Jennifer with cold, controlled fury and said 6 words that would change everything. "I'm a lawyer. You just made a huge mistake." The captain appeared from the cockpit, his face grave. "What's going on back here?" he demanded. Sarah stood in the aisle, still rubbing her arms where Jennifer's fingers had dug in. Red marks were already forming on her skin. Her shoulder throbbed with a pain that brought tears to her eyes. "This flight attendant just physically assaulted me," Sarah said, her voice shaking but clear. Jennifer's face went pale. "I did not assault her. She was being disruptive and refusing to comply." "I asked for help with my bag," Sarah interrupted, her voice getting stronger. "She refused. Then she grabbed me, dragged me up the aisle, and physically manhandled me when I tried to pull away." The captain looked at Marcus. "Is that true?" Marcus swallowed hard. He knew Jennifer. They'd worked together for years, but he'd seen what happened. "Sir?" "Yes." Jennifer grabbed the passenger's arms and pulled her toward the exit. "She was blocking the aisle," Jennifer protested. "So you grabbed her?" the captain asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "I was removing a disruptive passenger," Jennifer said, but her voice had lost its confidence. The captain turned to Sarah. "Ma'am, are you injured?" Sarah held up her arms, showing the red marks. "She grabbed me hard enough to bruise. And my shoulder. I have an old injury there. She aggravated it when she yanked my arm." "I need medical attention," Sarah added. "And I need to speak to your supervisor, and airport police, because what just happened was assault and battery." Jennifer's eyes widened. "This is ridiculous. I was doing my job." "Your job isn't to physically attack passengers," a man in first class called out. "We all saw it," a woman added. She grabbed her for no reason. The captain held up his hand for silence. Then he looked at Jennifer. Jennifer, go to the galley. Now. Don't speak to anyone. Don't touch anything. But Captain. Now. Jennifer walked stiffly to the back of the plane, her face burning with humiliation and anger. The captain turned back to Sarah. Ma'am, I apologize for what happened. We're going to delay this flight until we can get this sorted out properly. I'm calling for a supervisor and airport security right now. Sarah nodded, still shaking slightly from adrenaline. Thank you, she said quietly. A woman from business class stood up. I recorded everything, from the moment that flight attendant grabbed her. If you need evidence. Me too, said another passenger. I got it from a different angle. A third person called out. The captain's expression grew even more serious. Multiple witnesses. Multiple videos. Visible injuries. This was going to be bad. Within 10 minutes, the plane was swarming with people. Airport security arrived first, 2 officers who took statements from Sarah and several witnesses. Then came the airline supervisor, a harried-looking woman named Patricia, who kept apologizing and asking what she could do to help. Then came the paramedics, who examined Sarah's arms and shoulder, documenting the bruising and recommending she go to the hospital for x-rays to make sure nothing was damaged. Through it all, Sarah remained calm, methodical, almost clinical. She gave her statement clearly and precisely. She provided her contact information. She declined the supervisor's offers of vouchers and upgrades and apologies. I don't want vouchers, Sarah said firmly. I want a formal investigation. I want to know what your company is going to do to ensure this never happens to anyone else. Patricia nodded nervously. Of course, we take these matters very seriously. Do you? Sarah asked, her voice cutting. Because your flight attendant just assaulted a passenger in front of witnesses and you're offering me drink vouchers. Patricia's face reddened. Ma'am, I assure you, there will be a full investigation. There better be, Sarah said. Because I'm a senior attorney at Mitchell & Associates, and unless your company handles this properly, you're going to be hearing from my legal team. The blood drained from Patricia's face. You're a lawyer? Sarah pulled out her business card and handed it over. Patricia looked at it, looked at Sarah, looked at the 17 passengers still holding up their phones with video evidence, and realized the airline had just made a multi-million-dollar mistake. Sarah sat in seat 12A, finally, with an ice pack on her shoulder and a growing sense of clarity about what came next. Around her, passengers were buzzing with outrage on her behalf. That was completely out of line, a woman across the aisle said. I've never seen a flight attendant do something like that. I got the whole thing on video, a man behind her offered. I'll send it to you if you need it. Sarah turned to him. I definitely need it. Can I get your contact information? Within minutes, Sarah had collected contact details from 17 passengers who had witnessed and recorded the assault. Each one was eager to help, outraged by what they'd seen. One passenger, a retired lawyer himself, approached her quietly. You're going to sue, right? He asked. Sarah smiled grimly. Oh, absolutely. Good, he said. That was textbook assault and battery. False imprisonment too, arguably. And with this many witnesses and this much video evidence, they don't have a prayer. Sarah knew he was right. She'd handled enough litigation to recognize a slam-dunk case when she saw one. The elements were all there. Intent, Jennifer had deliberately grabbed her. Contact, physical touching without consent. Harm, bruising, pain, aggravation of existing injury. Witnesses, 17 of them. Evidence, multiple videos from multiple angles. Corporate liability, employee acting within scope of employment. It was almost too easy. Sarah pulled out her phone and started making notes. Request all security footage from aircraft. Request airlines training materials on passenger interactions. Request Jennifer Martinez's employment file. Request all complaints against Martinez in past 5 years. Request airlines policies on physical contact with passengers. Medical documentation of injuries. Witness statements. Video evidence compilation. She was still making notes when the pilot announced that the flight was officially canceled and all passengers would be rebooked. A collective groan went through the cabin. Due to the incident that occurred during boarding, we need to conduct a full investigation before this aircraft can depart, the captain explained. The airline will provide hotel accommodations and meal vouchers for anyone who needs them. More groans. People started gathering their belongings. Sarah stood carefully, wincing as her shoulder throbbed. A flight attendant, not Jennifer, a different one, approached her nervously. "Ma'am, the supervisor would like to speak with you before you leave. She's offering you a first-class ticket on tomorrow morning's flight and a full refund for today." Sarah looked at her. "Tell the supervisor I'll be in touch through my attorneys." The flight attendant's eyes widened. "Oh, okay." As Sarah walked off the plane, still holding the ice pack to her shoulder, she passed Jennifer Martinez in the jetway. Jennifer was standing with two airline supervisors, her face red and blotchy from crying. Their eyes met for just a moment. Sarah saw fear there. Recognition of how badly Jennifer had miscalculated, but Sarah felt no satisfaction, just a grim determination to make sure this never happened to anyone else. In the terminal, Sarah found a quiet corner and made a phone call. "Mitchell and Associates, how may I direct your call?" "This is Sarah Mitchell. I need to speak to Tom Reynolds in litigation. One moment, please." Tom picked up on the second ring. "Sarah, aren't you supposed to be on a plane?" "I was, until I was assaulted by a flight attendant." Silence. "Then, what?" Sarah explained the whole situation, the bag, the argument, the physical assault, the witnesses, the videos. When she finished, Tom let out a low whistle. 17 witnesses, all with video? All with video. And visible bruising? Paramedics documented everything. "Sarah, this is a gift. This airline is going to settle so fast, it'll make your head spin." "I don't want them to settle fast," Sarah said, her voice hard. "I want them to feel this. I want systemic change. I want every flight attendant in their company to know that you can't put your hands on passengers." Tom was quiet for a moment and, "Okay, let's do this right. Come in tomorrow. We'll start building the case." "I'll be there," Sarah said. She hung up and looked at her phone. Already, videos of the incident were starting to appear on social media. A passenger had posted one with the caption, "Insane. Flight attendant physically attacks passenger over luggage dispute." This is assault. It had been viewed 50,000 times already. By tomorrow, it would be millions. And the airline's nightmare was just beginning. By the next morning, the videos had been viewed over 5 million times. Sarah woke up to hundreds of notifications. News outlets were requesting interviews. Social media was exploding with outrage. The hashtag flight attendant assault was trending nationally. She scrolled through the comments. "This is absolutely insane. That flight attendant should be arrested. I'm never flying this airline again." The way she grabbed her arm. That's assault. Imagine if someone did this to a flight attendant. They'd be banned for life. News websites had picked up the story. Attorney assaulted by flight attendant over luggage dispute, shocking video. Airline under fire after flight attendant physically drags passenger. Viral video shows flight attendant attacking passenger, airline faces boycott. The airline had issued a statement overnight. "We are aware of an incident that occurred during boarding of Flight 447 yesterday. The matter is under investigation and we take all allegations of misconduct seriously. The employee in question has been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of the investigation." Sarah read the statement and shook her head. Administrative leave. Not fired. Not terminated. Just administrative leave. Not good enough. She got dressed, grabbed her files, and headed to her law firm's offices. Tom Reynolds was waiting in the conference room with 3 other senior partners. "Sarah," Tom said, standing when she entered. "How are you feeling?" She rolled her shoulder gingerly. "Sore. Angry. Ready to work." "Good, because we've already started building your case, and it's even stronger than we thought." He pulled up a screen showing a timeline. Jennifer Martinez has been with the airline for 8 years. In that time, she's had 14 complaints filed against her for aggressive behavior toward passengers. Sarah's eyebrows rose. 14? 14. Most were dismissed as he said, she said situations, but 3 of them specifically mentioned physical contact, grabbing arms, pushing, one allegation of shoving a passenger into a seat. And the airline did nothing? They gave her one written warning 2 years ago. That's it. They knew she had a pattern of aggressive behavior, and they did nothing to stop it. Another partner, Monica Chen, spoke up. That's negligent retention. The airline knew or should have known that Martinez posed a risk to passengers, and they failed to take appropriate action. Which means, Tom continued, we can go after not just the flight attendant, but the airline itself for corporate negligence. Sarah nodded slowly. What are we looking at for damages? Tom pulled up another document. Medical expenses for your shoulder, probably minimal, but documented. Pain and suffering, moderate. Loss of work time, minimal. But here's where it gets interesting. Punitive damages. Punitive damages are designed to punish egregious conduct and deter future misconduct, Monica explained. Given that the airline knew about Martinez's behavior and did nothing, we have a strong case for punitives. How strong? Sarah asked. Multi-million strong, Tom said, especially with the public outcry. Juries love cases like this. Ordinary person assaulted by corporate employee, company covered it up. It's David versus Goliath. Sarah thought about it. I don't want to just win money. I want them to change their policies. We can demand that as part of the settlement, Monica said. Mandatory retraining, new policies on physical contact, independent oversight of complaints. We can make systemic change part of the deal. Tom nodded. And trust me, with this much public pressure, they're going to want to settle. They can't afford the PR nightmare of a trial. As if on cue, Tom's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and smiled. Speaking of which, the airline's legal team just requested a meeting. They want to discuss resolution options. Already? Sarah said. It's been less than 24 hours. That's how bad this is for them, Tom said. The videos have been viewed tens of millions of times. Their stock is down 3%, customers are canceling flights, they're hemorrhaging money and goodwill by the hour. Good, Sarah said coldly. Let them sweat a little longer. Tell them we'll meet next week. Tom grinned. I like the way you think. Over the next few days, the story continued to dominate headlines. More passengers from other flights came forward with stories of Jennifer Martinez's aggressive behavior. Employee advocacy groups called for better training. Consumer protection organizations demanded FAA investigation. The airline was in full crisis mode, and Sarah Mitchell, sitting in her office with ice on her shoulder and a legal pad full of notes, was just getting started. The meeting happened exactly 1 week after the assault. Sarah sat at the head of a long conference table, flanked by Tom Reynolds and Monica Chen. Across from them sat 4 lawyers from the airline. 2 from their internal legal team, 2 from an expensive outside firm they'd brought in for damage control. The lead attorney, a silver-haired man named Richard Carlson, attempted a friendly smile. Miss Mitchell, thank you for agreeing to meet with us. We want to resolve this matter quickly and fairly. Sarah said nothing, just waited. Richard shifted uncomfortably. We've reviewed the incident thoroughly. While we acknowledge that the situation was unfortunate, we believe there are mitigating factors. Mitigating factors? Sarah repeated, her voice dangerously calm. Miss Martinez has been with our airline for 8 years with an otherwise exemplary record. She has 14 complaints on file, Monica interrupted, sliding a document across the table. Richard's smile faltered. Internal complaints are not the same as... 3 of them specifically alleged physical aggression, Monica continued. Your airline was aware of a pattern and failed to act. Richard looked at his colleagues, then back at Sarah. We're prepared to offer you a generous settlement, full refund of your ticket, $50,000 in compensation, and a lifetime platinum status with unlimited upgrades. The room went silent. Then Tom Reynolds actually laughed. $50,000? Are you joking? Richard's face reddened. That's a substantial offer for what amounts to a minor altercation. Minor? Sarah's voice cut like ice. Your employee physically assaulted me, grabbed me hard enough to leave bruises, aggravated an existing injury, falsely imprisoned me by preventing me from moving freely. All caught on camera by 17 witnesses. She leaned forward. Do you know what the medical bills are for the shoulder treatment I've needed? $12,000 so far. Physical therapy ongoing, possible surgery if it doesn't improve. Richard paled. We weren't aware. Do you know what my billable rate is as a senior attorney? $650 per hour. I've spent 40 hours dealing with this incident so far. That's $26,000 in lost work time. She wasn't done. Do you know how many people have viewed the assault videos? Over 30 million. Do you know how many customers have publicly stated they'll never fly your airline again? Over 100,000 on social media alone. The airline lawyers exchanged worried glances. Sarah continued, relentless. Your stock price has dropped 7%. That's a market cap loss of over $400 million. Your CEO issued a groveling public apology. The FAA has opened an investigation into your passenger safety protocols, and you're offering me $50,000. Richard tried to recover. Miss Mitchell, what would you consider a fair settlement? Tom slid a document across the table. $2 million in compensatory and punitive damages. Richard's eyes widened. $2 million for bruised arms? $2 million, Tom said calmly, for assault, battery, false imprisonment, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and negligent retention of a dangerous employee. That's absurd. Is it? Monica asked. Let's talk about what happens if we go to trial. She pulled out her tablet. We have 17 witnesses, all credible, all consistent. We have multiple videos from multiple angles. We have medical documentation. We have your employee's complaint history showing a pattern you ignored. A jury will see a powerful corporation that knowingly employed a violent flight attendant, Tom added. They'll see surveillance footage of a woman being physically attacked for asking for help with her bag, and they'll award punitive damages specifically designed to hurt you enough that you'll never let this happen again. Richard swallowed hard. We'd like to make a counteroffer. No, Sarah said simply. Excuse me? You don't get to counter. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to take our demand to your board. You're going to show them the videos. You're going to explain that this case is unwinnable, and you're going to come back with a settlement agreement. She stood up. You have 72 hours. After that, we file. And once we file, this becomes public record. Every detail, every complaint against Jennifer Martinez, every time your company ignored warning signs, every policy failure. The media will have a field day, Monica added sweetly. Richard looked like he'd been punched. 72 hours, Sarah repeated. Don't waste them. She walked out, her legal team following. Behind her, the airline lawyers sat in stunned silence. They'd expected negotiation, compromise, the usual dance of settlement discussions. Instead, they'd been demolished. And they knew, absolutely knew, that they were going to pay exactly what Sarah Mitchell demanded, because the alternative was far, far worse. 60 hours later, Richard Carlson called Tom Reynolds. We accept your terms. Tom put him on speaker so Sarah and Monica could hear. All of them? Tom asked. Yes, the $2 million plus the policy changes you demanded. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. I want it in writing, she said. Every provision, every reform, every protection. You'll have it by end of day, Richard said, his voice tight. The settlement agreement arrived at 5 p.m. Sarah read through every page carefully. Monetary terms, $2,000 payment to Sarah Mitchell within 30 days. Additional $150,000 for medical expenses and legal fees. No admission of wrongdoing standard. Confidentiality clause, which Sarah immediately rejected. Policy reforms, non-negotiable. 1. Mandatory training. All flight attendants must complete 40 hours of de-escalation and conflict resolution training within 6 months. 2. Physical contact policy. Strict prohibition on non-emergency physical contact with passengers. Violations result in immediate termination. 3. Complaint investigation. Independent third-party review of all physical contact complaints within 48 hours. 4. 3-strike policy. Any employee with 3 substantiated complaints of aggressive behavior is immediately terminated. 5. Passenger Bill of Rights. Clear, posted guidelines on what passengers can expect and how to file complaints. 6. Annual audits. Yearly review of complaint data and employee conduct by external firm. 7. Victim Compensation Fund. $500,000 fund for passengers harmed by employee misconduct. Sarah looked up at Tom and Monica. This is good, really good, but I want one more thing. What? Tom asked. I want Jennifer Martinez's termination confirmed in writing, and I want her permanently blacklisted from working for any airline. Tom made a note. I'll add it. The final agreement was signed 2 weeks later. The airline held a press conference to announce the settlement and reforms. The CEO stood at a podium looking genuinely chastened. We failed, Miss Mitchell. We failed our passengers, and we failed to live up to our own values. Today, we're committing to do better. He outlined the policy changes, announced Jennifer Martinez's termination, apologized to Sarah personally. It was broadcast live on national news. Sarah watched from her office, her shoulders still in a brace from the ongoing physical therapy. Tom walked in. "How does it feel?" "Satisfying," Sarah admitted, but also sad that it took a lawsuit and $2 million to get them to do the right thing. "That's how change happens sometimes," Tom said. "Money talks." "Yeah," Sarah said. "It does." The next day, Sarah did something she'd been planning since the settlement was finalized. She donated $500,000 of the settlement to passenger advocacy groups. Another $250,000 went to organizations fighting workplace violence. The remaining $1.25 million was hers, compensation for pain, suffering, medical bills, and the principle that assault has consequences. But more importantly than the money, the policy changes were real. Within 6 months, 12,000 flight attendants completed de-escalation training. 47 employees were terminated for aggressive behavior toward passengers. Complaints dropped by 60%. Passenger satisfaction scores increased. The airline became a model for industry-wide reforms. Other airlines started adopting similar policies voluntarily, not wanting to face their own $2 million lawsuit. The FAA issued new guidelines based on Sarah's settlement terms. Congress held hearings on passenger safety. The entire industry shifted. All because one flight attendant made the mistake of putting her hands on the wrong passenger. And that passenger refused to stay silent. 6 months after the settlement, Sarah received an unexpected letter. It was from a woman named Maria Gonzalez. "Dear Miss Mitchell, I was on a flight last month when a flight attendant started yelling at me for asking about an allergy-safe meal. In the past, I would have just accepted it. But I remembered your case. I remembered that we don't have to accept abuse. I filed a complaint. The flight attendant was required to complete additional training, and the airline apologized and gave me a voucher. It's not the same as what happened to you, but it mattered, because you showed all of us that we have rights, that we matter. Thank you for fighting back." Sarah read the letter twice, tears forming in her eyes. This was why it mattered. Not the $2 million, not the headlines, not the personal vindication, but the fact that one woman's refusal to accept assault had empowered thousands of others to stand up for themselves. That was justice. Real, lasting justice. And it was worth every bruise, every headache, every hour of litigation, because Jennifer Martinez grabbing her arm that day had been intended to silence her, to intimidate her, to put her in her place. Instead, it had started a movement. And that movement had changed everything. Jennifer Martinez sat in her small apartment staring at her laptop screen. The news story was playing again, for the 1,000th time. Former flight attendant terminated after viral assault video. She closed the laptop, but she could still see the images in her mind. Her own face twisted in anger, her hands gripping Sarah Mitchell's arms, the shock on Sarah's face, the phones, so many phones, all recording, all judging. Jennifer had lost everything. Her job, her career, her reputation. No other airline would hire her. Sarah's settlement had included an industry-wide blacklist. Her friends had stopped calling. Her family was disappointed. Online, she was a villain. A monster. The face of everything wrong with customer service. Death threats filled her inbox daily. She'd had to delete all her social media. Move to a new apartment when protesters showed up at her old one. Change her phone number 3 times. All because of one mistake. One moment of frustration and poor judgment. Jennifer knew she should feel remorseful. She'd been to therapy. Her therapist kept asking how she felt about what she'd done. The truth, she still felt angry. Angry at Sarah Mitchell for being difficult. Angry at the passengers for recording instead of minding their own business. Angry at the airline for firing her instead of standing by her. Angry at the world for deciding she was the villain when she'd just been trying to do her job. But beneath the anger, there was something else. Fear. Because Jennifer had tried to find other work. Any work. Retail, restaurants, customer service, administrative work. Every interview ended the same way. "Wait, are you the Jennifer Martinez? The one from that video?" And then, "We'll be in touch." They never were. She was unemployable. At 34 years old, her career was over. All her training, all her experience, all those years of service, gone. And the worst part, she still didn't fully understand why. She'd grabbed a passenger's arm. She'd pulled her toward the exit. That was it. Okay, maybe she'd been too rough. Maybe she should have called for help instead of handling it herself. But assault? Battery? A $2 million lawsuit? It seemed so disproportionate. Until her lawyer, the one the airline had provided before firing her, explained it in terms even Jennifer couldn't ignore. You put your hands on someone without their consent. That's assault. You caused visible bruising. That's battery. You did it in front of witnesses. That's proof. And you did it while representing your employer. That's corporate liability. It was 5 seconds, Jennifer had protested. 5 seconds of violence, the lawyer replied. That's all it takes. Now, sitting in her apartment with bills piling up and nowhere to go, Jennifer finally understood. It wasn't about 5 seconds. It was about power. She'd had power, the uniform, the authority, the ability to remove passengers from flights, and she'd abused it. She'd let her frustration override her training. She'd let her ego convince her that she was in the right. She'd let her assumption that this passenger would just comply, would just accept being grabbed and pulled, guide her actions. And she'd been wrong. So wrong. Jennifer opened her laptop again and typed Sarah Mitchell's name into the search bar. Articles about the settlement came up immediately. Photos of Sarah looking professional and composed, quotes about passenger rights and systemic change, stories about the policy reforms her case had triggered. Jennifer read them all, feeling smaller and smaller. This wasn't just about her anymore. She'd become a symbol, a cautionary tale, the face of what not to do. Her 5 seconds of poor judgment had sparked industry-wide changes, new training programs, new policies, new protections for passengers, all because she'd grabbed Sarah Mitchell's arm. Jennifer closed the laptop again and looked around her empty apartment. She had no job, no career prospects, no future in the industry she'd devoted 8 years to. Her savings were nearly gone. She'd probably have to move back in with her parents, start over completely, maybe go back to school, learn a new trade, reinvent herself, but even then, the video would follow her, forever, because the internet never forgets. Jennifer Martinez, flight attendant who assaulted a passenger, would be searchable forever. Her lowest moment, preserved in HD, viewed millions of times. She thought about Sarah Mitchell, probably in her nice office, back to her successful life, $2 million richer, a hero to passengers everywhere. While Jennifer was here, alone, destroyed. It wasn't fair. But as her therapist kept reminding her, fair wasn't the point. Consequences were. Actions had consequences. And Jennifer Martinez had just learned that lesson in the hardest way possible. She'd put her hands on the wrong person, and it had cost her everything. 3 months after the settlement, the aviation industry was unrecognizable. The CEO of another major airline called an emergency board meeting. We need to implement the Mitchell reforms before we become the next headline, he said, pulling up the viral video on the conference room screen. The board members watched in uncomfortable silence as Jennifer Martinez grabbed Sarah Mitchell's arm. This could have been our employee, the CEO continued. This could have been our $2 million lawsuit. This could have been our PR nightmare. What are you proposing? A board member asked. The CEO pulled up a presentation. Complete overhaul of our passenger interaction policies, based on the reforms that came out of the Mitchell settlement. He clicked through slides. New training requirements. 40 hours conflict de-escalation for all flight attendants. Annual refresher courses. Role-playing exercises for difficult passenger scenarios. Emphasis on verbal de-escalation over physical intervention. New physical contact policies. Zero tolerance for non-emergency physical contact. Clear definition of what constitutes emergency. Immediate suspension for violations pending investigation. Termination for substantiated complaints. New complaint processes. Independent third-party review. 48-hour response time guarantee. Public database of complaint statistics. Passenger compensation for substantiated violations. One board member raised a hand. This is going to cost millions to implement. You know what costs more? The CEO asked. A $2 million lawsuit, plus the stock price drop, plus the customer exodus, plus the regulatory scrutiny. He clicked to a final slide showing the financial impact of the Mitchell case on the airline involved. Stock price, minus 12%. Customer satisfaction, minus 34%. Social media sentiment, minus 67%. Estimated total cost, $18 million. We're implementing these reforms, the CEO said firmly. All of them, starting immediately. The board voted unanimously to approve. Within 6 months, all major U.S. airlines had adopted similar policies, not because they cared about passenger safety, though many did, not because they believed it was the right thing to do, though some did, but because they were terrified of becoming the next viral disaster. The Sarah Mitchell case had proven that one incident could cost tens of millions of dollars, that social media could destroy a brand in hours, that passengers had phones and weren't afraid to use them. The power dynamic had shifted. Flight attendants could no longer grab passengers without consequence. Airlines could no longer dismiss complaints without investigation. Passengers could no longer be physically manhandled for minor disputes, all because one lawyer refused to stay silent. The FAA issued new guidelines based on the Mitchell settlement. Federal Aviation Administration, Circular 120XX, Passenger Interaction Standards. Effective immediately, all commercial airlines must implement the following minimum standards for passenger interactions. 1. De-escalation training for all customer-facing employees. 2. Prohibition on non-emergency physical contact. 3. Independent review of physical contact complaints. 4. Public reporting of complaint statistics. 5. Passenger Bill of Rights posted in all aircraft. Airlines that failed to comply faced fines and potential suspension of operating certificates. Within a year, passenger complaints of physical mistreatment dropped by 73% industry-wide. Flight attendant training programs were revolutionized. New hires spent more time learning conflict resolution than beverage service. Experienced employees were retrained on de-escalation techniques. Supervisors were taught to recognize and address aggressive behavior before it escalated. The culture shifted from "the flight attendant is always right" to "passengers deserve dignity and respect." Sarah watched these changes unfold from her office, tracking every new policy, every training program, every airline announcement. She kept a folder of letters from passengers who'd benefited from the reforms. A flight attendant started to grab my arm, then stopped herself and apologized. She said she'd been retrained after the Mitchell case. "Thank you. I filed a complaint about aggressive behavior, and it was actually investigated. They took it seriously. This never would have happened before." I saw a flight attendant de-escalate a difficult situation with patience and professionalism. She told me later that the new training made all the difference. Each letter reminded Sarah why she'd fought, not for the $2 million, not for personal vindication, but for systemic change, for a world where passengers didn't have to fear physical violence from the people supposed to ensure their safety, for an industry that valued dignity over authority, for consequences that actually meant something. Jennifer Martinez had grabbed her arm for 5 seconds. But those 5 seconds had triggered a transformation that would protect millions of passengers for decades to come. And that, Sarah thought as she filed another letter, was justice in its purest form. 2 years after the assault, Sarah Mitchell stood in front of a congressional committee. The hearing was titled, "Passenger Safety and Employee Conduct in Commercial Aviation." Sarah had been invited to testify as an expert witness. She looked out at the senators, the media, the airline executives in the back row, and began. 2 years ago, I was physically assaulted by a flight attendant for asking for help with my luggage. That assault lasted approximately 5 seconds, but its impact will last forever. She clicked to the first slide of her presentation, the viral video, muted, showing Jennifer Martinez grabbing her arm. This video has been viewed over 100 million times. It sparked outrage, it triggered lawsuits, it forced industry-wide reforms, but more importantly, it started a conversation. Next slide. Statistics. Since the Mitchell case, as it's come to be called, physical mistreatment complaints in aviation have dropped 73%. Training hours for de-escalation have increased 400%. Passenger confidence in airline safety has risen 28%. Next slide. Policy changes. 43 airlines have adopted comprehensive passenger protection policies. The FAA has implemented federal guidelines. State legislatures have passed laws protecting passengers from assault. Corporate cultures have shifted. She looked directly at the committee members. But the work isn't done, because while my case had a resolution, thousands of others don't. Passengers are still mistreated. Employees still abuse authority. and accountability is still inconsistent. She clicked to her final slide. Recommendations. Federal legislation requiring 1. Mandatory assault reporting and tracking across all airlines. 2. Criminal penalties for airline employees who physically assault passengers. 3. Federal database of terminated employees to prevent rehiring. 4. Passenger compensation fund for victims of employee violence. 5. Annual independent audits of airline safety culture. A senator raised her hand. Miss Mitchell, some argue that these regulations would be too burdensome for airlines. What's your response? Sarah didn't hesitate. Senator, my medical bills exceeded $15,000. I required months of physical therapy. I still have shoulder pain, and I was lucky I had resources to fight back. Most passengers don't. The burden of assault is far greater than the burden of regulation. Another senator spoke up. What about the employee who assaulted you? What happened to her? Jennifer Martinez was terminated and blacklisted from the aviation industry. She's unemployable in her field. Some would say that's too harsh, but I'd argue it's proportional. She used her position of authority to commit violence. There should be zero tolerance for that. The hearing continued for 2 hours. Sarah answered every question with clarity and conviction. By the end, 3 senators had committed to sponsoring the Passenger Safety Act, legislation based directly on Sarah's recommendations. As she left the hearing room, a young woman approached her. Miss Mitchell? I'm Emma Rodriguez. I'm a flight attendant with Delta. Sarah tensed slightly. Emma noticed. I'm not here to defend what happened to you. I'm here to thank you. Thank me? Yes. Because the training we received after your case changed how I do my job. I was taught that de-escalation starts with empathy, that passengers aren't the enemy, that my job is to help, not to control. Emma's eyes were sincere. Last month, I had a passenger who was frustrated about a delayed flight. Old me would have gotten defensive, would have used my authority to shut him down, but new me listened, apologized, explained, helped him rebook, and you know what? He thanked me. He actually thanked me. She smiled. That would never have happened before your case, before the reforms, before the industry learned that treating people with dignity actually works better than treating them like problems. Sarah felt emotion welling up. Thank you for telling me that, she said quietly. Emma nodded. No, thanked you. For fighting, for refusing to let them sweep it under the rug, for making us all better at our jobs. As Sarah walked to her car, she thought about everything that had changed since that day on Flight 447. The policies, the training, the culture, the consequences. Jennifer Martinez grabbing her arm had been intended to control her, to intimidate her, to assert authority. Instead, it had sparked a revolution. Passengers had power now. Voices, rights, protection. Employees had accountability, training, consequences, clear boundaries. Airlines had oversight, transparency, incentive to do better. And it all started because one lawyer refused to accept that being assaulted was just part of flying. Sarah got in her car and drove home, her shoulder aching slightly, a permanent reminder of that day, but also a reminder of what she'd achieved. Justice wasn't just about the $2 million settlement. It wasn't just about Jennifer Martinez losing her job. It was about the millions of passengers who would fly safer because of what happened. The thousands of employees who were better trained. The industry that was forced to evolve. Sarah Mitchell had been assaulted over a luggage dispute, but she'd turned that assault into lasting change. And that, more than any settlement, more than any headline, more than any viral video, was her legacy.